Good morning, everyone. It's Dr. Kira Laurie. I'm so excited and happy to be here today with my dear friend Amanda Testa. Amanda specializes in helping all of us reconnect to our pleasure and our joy. And welcome, Amanda. And we are so honored and excited to have you here. And let's share with the audience a little bit about your background and what we're going to be talking about today.
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, Dr. Carol. I always love talking with you, and I just so appreciate this amazing work that you're doing because it's so needed. So I am a sex and relationship coach. I've been doing this work for a decade now, helped thousands of clients over the years in reconnecting to their sexuality and having better connection with themselves. And really what I find it rooted in is connecting to your own body. And so oftentimes clients come to me during times of transition. And I know too, in dealing with healing from breast cancer and, keeping that pleasure kind of alive as you go through the journey is a challenge. And so I think during times of transition, especially, we can kind of find simple ways to connect to pleasure to help us move through.
Wonderful. And one of the things I always use as a reference for our reality is, unfortunately, it's advertising on television. So we never see an advertisement on television for, hi, let's reconnect to your pleasure today. Or have you reconnected to your pleasure today? Here's a pill. Because we see quite the opposite. A woman is depressed and then, take a pill and everything. The house is clean, whatever that means. And she's serving the family a picnic lunch, which drives me crazy. So let's talk about how that is not discussed, pleasure. And I think trauma tends to put pleasure on the back burner. You
Yes.
just go into this protective mode because you had surgery on your body and you're in pain and you have feelings about your body changing.
Yes.
And it creates a rift between you and your partner, whether that person's a man or a woman. Nobody knows how to talk about this.
Yes.
Right?
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, first of all, there's so much shame around just our culture in general. And a lot of times there's shame around a cancer diagnosis. My mother had breast cancer, and I just remember you just never talked about it, right? She didn't want to talk about it. And there's so much that you kind of take on yourself because you don't want to stress other people out, or you don't want to be a burden. Right. And I think that is what we're taught, right? Which is so wrong, because the number one way I feel like people can move through is through connection and community, right? Even if it's just with your caregivers, if you don't have a huge community, but just finding that support, knowing that you aren't in it alone. And that in itself can be pleasurable. Because when I talk about that, I really think about it in a very big sense, right? There's of course sexual pleasure, but there's also just like the pleasure of connection, the pleasure of trying to find ways to invite in a little more comfort into your experience, right? Whether it's, bringing some things that are beautiful and colorful to be around you while you sit and receive your chemo, whether it's, when you're not feeling well, can you have like some things in your space that like help to invite in some joy in some small way so that you can keep yourself motivated. I know one of the things my mom, and at the time my dad had early onset Alzheimer's as well. So she was caregiving for him.
Time for both them and for you, I'm sure. Sorry.
Yes. But I just remember one of the things when she came home after her mastectomy and she, had the drains and was not feeling her best self. And my dad was just so sweet because she was crying. She was like, I just feel hideous, just so upset. And my dad, even though we had early onset Alzheimer's, he looked at her and he's like, you're still the most beautiful woman to me, which was so sweet. And I just thought,
beautiful.
That is some of the things, it is so true, because especially in our culture, and she was 50 at the time, we are just, as women, we have so much that we hold. As people with breasts, we have so much that we hold here too. And so this is a part of our femininity, and, going through that process of kind of finding love for your own body again, finding that connection with yourself after going through something traumatic like this, it is a journey. But I think, one of the first things is finding a way to connect to even anything that you can that brings in like stability, neutrality, so that you can start there, right? It doesn't have to be starting with pleasure at first, but it's just like finding ways that you can just find even stability in your own.
What is stability? What does that mean? Because that's a very interesting concept. Nobody's ever spoken about stability before, and we don't see advertisements on television. Are you feeling stable this morning? And I don't actually ever write an email to women, and I write emails to women every day in my community about different topics, but I've never interested. It's interesting. I've never even thought about the concept of stability, which is a beautiful thing to talk about.
Well, one of the things I really like this, because this is a term I learned from somatic experiencing, is just like kind of finding when pleasure feels far away, or if you've been dealing with a lot of trauma, if you can't like really even be in your own body, or that doesn't feel like a good place to be, sometimes it's just like finding the things that are stable. Like, what can you, in this moment, can I just kind of trust that I'm sitting in my chair and that gravity is holding me to the ground? And just trusting in that.
It's very simple.
So like that stability, it can be huge. Even like kind of feeling like just the stability of your body, right? Even kind of when you just can hold your bones, like put your arms and just grab, if you can touch your arms or your hands and just kind of feeling like, this is my body. I am here. Like, I am here. Those are simple things, but they bring that stability of that kind of just brings you back to this realization that like, no matter what, I am here. I am here. And that is hugely important, right? Because that can be the first step to move down the line to the next, feeling better, right? You got to start with finding the stability and the neutrality of what's, what you can feel just stable in, right? It might not even be good yet, but it's stability. That's kind of what I mean by that. So thank you for asking, because that, yeah.
It's a very beautiful concept, and I really appreciate you bringing it. So, woman's been through a mastectomy and she's disconnected from her body. And I think that leaving your body is actually self-protective in the beginning.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
And then the question becomes, how do you come back? You don't want to stay out. You have to come back, right?
Correct. And I think when you are talking about coming back into, and you're right, it is often a self-protective thing. It's often needed, right? Especially when there's pain or discomfort. It's sometimes better to not be having to focus on that. So, and in some ways, when you're thinking about bringing in pleasure in that way, it's even just like, what are the things that make me feel good, right? Is it that I enjoy, clothing that feels soft? Is it that I want something that is a color that lights me up? Is it something that, kind of the things that just bring back into your physical surroundings, right? And that can even start with kind of thinking about your five senses, because when I like to talk a lot about sensuality when it comes to pleasure, because truly what that means is just enjoying pleasure through your five senses. And the more you can kind of bring your awareness back to those things, it helps you to bring your awareness back into your body. So it can start with, what are the things that I do enjoy eating? Because sometimes the taste buds are all weird. Things make you sick. It's like, what is something that I can, eat or drink that feels good, that I know I can count on? Maybe it's even just a sip of water, or like having essential oils, or like in a diffuser, or things that aren't triggering to like the nausea, but like they just kind of help you connect to what's good. And then those are the baby steps to kind of bring in more feeling into your body's sensations, right? Because you can start by just, once you feel more comfortable with like noticing your sensations, I like to call it a sensation snapshot. You can do that if you're in a moment where you're like, oh, you know what? I'm actually feeling kind of okay right now. What's going on?
That's just for 3 minutes or 2 seconds. I mean,
yes. And so that's kind of bringing your awareness back into your body. And so the more you can do those on a regular basis, it becomes easier to be with what you're feeling inside. And sometimes it is like when you feel the uncomfortable things, is learning to sit with those, right? Is learning to be with, like, say, for example, if you are feeling into your body and you're feeling like a super clenchy feeling in like your neck or your throat, and just like kind of being with that and what might be beneath it. Because often maybe it's like an emotion that wants to happen. Like maybe there's tears, or maybe there's like an expression that wants to happen. It can help you move through all that you've been holding in through everything you've been through.
I think that sometimes when you get back in touch, you need to be prepared for the fact that there will be a lot of emotions, and your body trusts what happens, because your body is not going to, and your mind will not bring you more than you can handle in the moment.
Yeah. And then I think my mom even said that. She was at the time, she's like, God, you can't do this to me. She's like, but he did. And I had to be like, and I'm not going to let it get me down, you know. And I think too, a lot of it is your mindset, because, you know, it is so hard when you have a diagnosis like this, because there's a lot of unknowns, there's a lot of fear, there's all the things. But when you can kind of wrap your mindset around, you know, the things that you can connect to that are supportive, that makes a huge difference, right? And even just like listening to music you like, all those things that help reduce stress, you know, that does help to pleasure-based interventions are proven to help your immune function and quality of life. So, I mean, it might seem like a, I don't know what's the word, like fluff, but it's really not at all. It's really rooted in science.
It's not. It's rooted in science. Not that we need science all the time to give something validity, but pleasure actually reduces the cortisol levels and then stimulates the GABA receptors in your brain. So you're able to receive positive energy, and it turns off that fight or flight response in your body. So there is a lot to be said for giving yourself and letting people give you pleasure. Now, pleasure does not need, you know, let me back up. I think a lot of people's perspective on pleasure and sexuality comes from the movies. So I hear this all the time. I mean, I don't have sex like they do in the movies. And I mean, how come it looks so great in the movies? In reality, it's not like that. Everybody, there are experts who teach people how to move. There's the camera person, there's the lighting person, both of the people, men, women, whatever, they've been through makeup and hair. I mean, it's not real.
Correct.
It's a fantasy, and it's never going to be for us. It's the movies.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. And also all the Photoshop that happens in the editing for all of it, right? It's not realistic. And I think, first of all, just naming that it's not realistic is important. The other thing too, I will just state, is I think oftentimes when people are dealing with cancer diagnosis, there's not always the view on your sexual health in there, because oftentimes you might be losing your uterus, or might be having a hysterectomy as well as there can be all kinds of things going on, but oftentimes the sexual side effects aren't talked about enough.
No, I think that's 99% of the time they're not talked about. And if the woman brings it up, and good for you if you do bring it up, well, let's just refer you out to or put you on some antidepressants to help you with that. I mean, you need to see an expert for that. It's not their wheelhouse, right?
Yeah. But I think it's just important to note, because there are ways that you can stay connected in ways that invite in bonding, that invite in this feel good hormones that don't necessarily have to be actual sex, right? There can be a lot of ways to keep connected and to feel that will be supportive, right? Even when you're not feeling good. Because I think that's a thing that people forget. Like because it's true. Like you're like focusing on one thing. You're like, I'm going to move past this. I'm going to get the treatment. I'm going to move on, and not realizing you can still enjoy the connections that you do have. You can still enjoy the pleasures that you do have along the way. That doesn't have to go away. You don't have to compartmentalize everything, right? Yeah.
So I think this is really a time to be really open and communicative with your partner.
Yes.
And I'm just going to give some examples. I don't want you touching my breast or my body right now, but a back rub or rubbing my hands or my feet with oil would feel great.
Yes.
Communication is key. I think it's safe to say that your partner is also freaked out.
Yeah.
So if you can communicate together about that freak out, and don't think it's going to be a perfect communication, it's better than both of you walling off and going into your corners, right? There's healing when you're under stress and you come together like that.
Definitely. And there's so many fun ways to, connect that you can still do, right? Even when you're healing. And sometimes people still love to have sex, right? So it's like everyone's unique and different in their experience. And I do want to name too, it's like when it comes back to being in your body, is finding ways to love your body and being again, is like, even if you lose your physical organs, you still have the energetic space, which is very potent, right? So there's still ways to connect to your body and find new ways, new avenues of what feels good. That can also be a doorway to exploring even more pleasure than you had previously, oftentimes, because people, then you can open up to more aspects of what feels good versus just, maybe ones, or like the usual old ways that maybe you've been conditioned into doing, or that you've seen in movies or whatnot, right?
Yeah. And as we get older, all of that gets thrown out the window anyway. I mean, it's very different. Being intimate and giving your partner pleasure are very different when you get older. When you're younger, you can be ready for intercourse, 1, 2, 3, and you're done. When you're older, it's like you got to get in the mood. You got to stop being so busy. You need to take a hot bath maybe and use some essential oils. And you have to really make a conscious decision to relax and receive as well as give.
Yes, definitely. Definitely.
So let's talk a little bit more about what you wanted to talk about, which is, the trauma response, and dive into that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, like you mentioned before, like a lot of times the way we typically respond in times of stress or overwhelm or trauma is typically, there's a few ways that it can go about, but typically there's like either a hyper response or a hypo response. And so when, you might already be aware of this, but typically I like to just kind of share that, like this range of resilience is the place where that's when you're feeling pretty good, right? Things get upset. You can come, you kind of get upset. You come back to a place of feeling good. You get sad. You come back to a place of feeling good. But more often than not, you're kind of in this range of resilience, or like this window of tolerance where you can easily move through what happens in your life. And what happens when we go through trauma or times of stress or, cancer diagnosis, all these things, then we can respond a couple of ways, right? So one way is that you kind of shoot up into anxiety and stress and overwhelm and like constant hypervigilance and research and just like all the things, the worry. And you can kind of stay up here. And then maybe you just crash out of that and you go shooting straight down into, the hypo, which is more like, oh, I just can't even deal. Like, you just can go into a depression, right? Really shut down, really just kind of.
That's a very good example of the ups and the downs that happen. Excellent.
Right. And so what you want, so the way you come back into this range of resilience is kind of, is learning ways to bring yourself back down to a place of kind of neutrality. That's why I like to talk about stability, because sometimes it's not feeling good. Sometimes it's just neutral. And so when you notice yourself, like if you have a tendency to be really hyper and like anxious and all of these things, what can be helpful is to start to notice, what are the things that help me slow down, right? What are the things that give me like a full body exhale? And maybe thinking what those might be for you. I like that term. I learned it from one of my mentors, Rachel Maddox, like the full body exhale. Those are things that are fairly easy to do, that you don't need a lot of accoutrements to do, right? Maybe it's, I can take 10 rounds of deep breaths, or I can feel the sun on my skin, or I can, touch my face and just kind of notice how that feels. I often love to share this one hold where you just kind of can invite in some self-compassion when you're feeling stressed. So if you put one hand on your forehead and one hand on the base of your spine, and you can just hold it like this if it feels good. If that doesn't feel good, alternatively, you can just kind of place your hands on your thighs. Like if it hurts to lift your arms up, you can place your hands on your thighs and just press down hard on your thighs, and just kind of feeling that containment. That can just help to slow down your nervous system. It can invite in that parasympathetic rest and digest, the calming down.
I didn't realize that. Pressing hard on your thighs can
because what you're doing is you're kind of trying to bring your awareness down slow, right? Because usually when we're up here, there's like that's where a lot of the heat, a lot of the stress, and when you can kind of bring it down to a more grounded place or just to slow things down. Oftentimes that's in like the lower parts of us, the lower parts of our body. And so it can be interesting to note, even just, and then when you kind of place, also when you press down on your thighs, it's just kind of reminding you of that I'm here-ness, like the stability of your body, even just your bones, your skeleton, right? Even.
You also just say, I am here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that for those women who are watching this later, do not underestimate this transformation that these little tools Amanda is sharing can provide you with. Do not underestimate it. And if your mind is going, oh, that's ridiculous, that's not going to make a difference, that's what I call the hopelessness syndrome. That's your negative voice. And you want to say, okay, I'm just going to turn the volume off on that one right now. I'm not paying attention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the same thing can happen, like alternatively, if you are one that like kind of goes and that your response is like hypo, where you feel more shut down and dissociated and just like kind of numb to everything. What you can do in those situations are, again, like, what are the things that invite in that full body exhale? What are the things that maybe invite in warmth, right? So thinking about even just like, can I enjoy a cup of tea that's, and like it really be with hold of that heat in my hand. Sometimes I recommend like heating pads on the low back, on the kidneys, right? That's a really good one to just kind of bring back in some aliveness. It's like, what are the things that move you a little bit towards aliveness? Not to the point where it feels too much, but just like little steps. Maybe it's sitting out in the sun and taking some breaths and like listening to the sounds of the birds.
I love that. Listen to the birds.
Yeah. Because
birds are amazing. People don't, don't realize the beautiful sounds they make. And there's a couple birds in my neighborhood. When I go on power walks, I always listen for them, and they're like singing. It uplifts your spirits.
Yes. And I think that's the thing too, when you're in times where you're just like checked out, when you can kind of tune into those rhythms of nature, it invites in some stability, right? Looking at the birds, like noticing the flocks of birds, noticing the patterns of the sun rising and the sun setting. Like, what are the regular things that you can just look out of your window and see that can invite in some of that? Again, stability, I've seen that word a lot, but it's a part of pleasure, is being able to count on these rhythms. Because when there's a lot of unknowns, then like reconnecting to those rhythms that you can count on can feel really good, right? Making little routines for yourself that are regular, that can feel really good. And so, again, I think that's why I like to invite in the sensual things that can feel sometimes more easier, like listening to music. Like, what is music that you enjoy? What are the sounds that you enjoy? Like you just mentioned, tuning into the birds and really noticing the nuance, because not only are you becoming present, right? When you connect to pleasure, it kind of shifts. Like pleasure and pain both originate from the same part in the brain. So when you can default more to what's enjoyable, then you can over time create the pathways to that more often than not. Yeah.
Wonderful. So how do we shift?
Mm-hmm.
What's the next step?
Yeah. So I would say, even just thinking for yourself, like, what are those things that give me that full body exhale? What are the things that I know that can make me feel better? Even making a list, because oftentimes we don't even know. So I invite, and if you don't like writing, you can speak it into your voice memos on your phone. If you don't like, maybe art's more your thing and you want to draw it, like just finding the way to tune into what you desire and writing it down. Like, what are the things that I enjoy tasting? What are the things that I enjoy, eating or smelling? Or what are the things that, feel nourishing when I feel nauseous? What are the things that, that I like around my space? Do I have like a favorite blanket, or do I have a favorite sweater? Or do I maybe want to invest in a weighted blanket? Weighted blankets are amazing. Especially if you're cold a lot, like, just get bundled up, cocoon yourself and like really let yourself be warm. So like making a list of those things for you. What are those things? Is it feeling the sun? Is it listening to music? Is it maybe, enjoying a bath, or, getting a head massage, or just like offering yourself some hugs? Because sometimes even that feels good, just giving your own self a hug, right? Those things, because I think that's a great first step. And then from there, it's like, where are the ways that I want to connect more with my body and being, right? So maybe are there things I want to enjoy more? And how can I maybe make the steps to do that? Maybe if it's reconnecting to your body, what is some ways you can do that? Maybe is it like, I want to slowly start to, be able to give myself like a full body just massage when I put my lotion on, be more intentional about it. Like when I'm taking a bath or a shower, can I really enjoy all the experience of that feels good? Like the warmth of the water, or the smell of the soap, or the feeling of, massaging my head, or having someone wash my hair. Sometimes even getting a pedicure, like whatever it might be, these little things that can like make you feel good. And then that starts to engage more of like, all right, that does feel good. Now I want more of that. Right.
Little things add up.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
How do you bring up the conversation with your spouse or your partner about this?
Well, I think it's so important just to even, I think oftentimes when you are struggling to talk, it can be helpful to maybe bring up like a third entity, or like, I was just listening to this interview and they were talking about.
Bring it up like,
yeah,
it's not directly. Okay, ladies, I think that's a great idea, because that neutralizes a potentially very charged topic. It's a great idea, Amanda. Yeah. Okay, go ahead. I was just listening to this interview or a podcast, and go ahead.
Yeah, and they were talking about, sex and cancer, and, let's talk about this. I'm curious what your thoughts are. Are you open to sharing what maybe, I love this, there's a communication strategy I love. It's called fears, desires, and loves. And it can be challenging to have these conversations. So sometimes it can be helpful when there's, something to follow. So it can start with, number one, what are some of the things that you desire, right? For the relationship, for this journey, to how you're going to stay connected during this, and let both of you share. So you can even set a timer. Okay, I'm going to set a timer for 2 minutes, you share, and then for 2 minutes, I share.
Okay. Now the thing about this, ladies, is when your partner is sharing, and if he or she is saying stuff that like, what the heck are they talking about? I don't agree with that. And it's pushing one of your buttons. You just got to sit there and be quiet.
Yes.
Because you don't want to interrupt and then start, well, I don't think that. I don't think I'm doing that. That's not true. The next thing you know, you're having a big fight. This is what we're trying to avoid. There's something called passive listening. Yes. And you got to put on your face, and then you don't want to get defensive. If that's how they're thinking, when it's your turn, you can share how you're thinking.
Yes, that is so good, Dr. Carol. To just note is, those are the ground rules, no interrupting, just letting everybody talk. That's why it can be helpful to have a timer, because then you're like, okay, here's what they said to do in the podcast is you put the timer on for 2 minutes. And then when you're listening, just listen to what they have to say. You're not responding. You can just say thank you when they're done. And if they do say things that are triggering, just put those in your back pocket, because you can talk about that at a later time. But just for the purpose of this exercise, you are just allowing that conversation to where you have the practice of speaking and vulnerably, and then being heard without conversation. So they'll share for 2 minutes. What are you afraid of? Then you'll share for 2 minutes. What are you afraid of? And then the next question is, the first thing was the desires. What do you want from this? And then the second question is, what are you afraid of? And granted, this can sometimes be hard. So while the 2 minutes is going, if they're not talking, or if there's a lull, you can just say, what are you afraid of? And give them some time. You can just, if there's nothing that comes up right away, that's okay. Silence is okay too. But usually the 2 minutes, it can feel like 10 minutes sometimes when you're having this.
It feels like 10 minutes, and sometimes it feels like 10 seconds.
Yes.
And I also think it's important to speak about you and not say, well, you're doing this, and then that makes me feel this way. It's like, it's not about, and you need to say that at the beginning. We're speaking about ourselves. We're not speaking about what I'm doing, or you think what I'm doing, or how what I'm doing is making you feel. Let's just talk from our own perspective. And that takes a lot of tendency to feel attacked away from the conversation.
Yes, it's very much of like your I statements, like what your experience is. And then final question is, what do you love about me? And so you just take turns sharing those things. And usually it can be a very moving experience, because oftentimes we don't have that set space just to share. And especially when you're going through something like this, it's easy to not talk about it. Right. And so I think, and shame comes up a lot. And I think there's a lot of correlation between shame around this, and also sexual shame, because I work a lot with shame. And so one of the things that can be the most healing is to just talk about it. And also to share with others, even when you don't want to be a burden. As you probably, I know you talk about this too, but you have to be able to build community of support, because you can't do it all on your own. And it's kind of, part of it is learning to receive support and ask for it from your partner, from your community, and knowing that, there are times in life, I think this is, I forget who told me this once, but I love this analogy of kind of like a web of light. And sometimes there's people that have a lot of it, and sometimes you don't have a lot of it. And so that's what a beautiful thing about a community is the people that have a lot to give can help the ones that don't. And when you don't, it's totally okay to rely on the other people's light to help balance it out. Like we're all like this connected community, and that can feel less. I think if you're struggling with feeling like a burden, it can help alleviate that a little bit, because you just realize like this is just how we're meant to be, right? When there's more energy to give, someone will give it, and that person, when they need more energy, someone will give it to them. It doesn't even have to be you, right? You don't have to owe these people anything that have helped you. It's just like that web of support that is available, right? Because oftentimes we feel like, oh, this person brought me dinner, now I got to write a thank you note, and then I got to take dinner. And it's like, no.
Yeah. And I think one of the things I talk about when you're initially diagnosed is empowered through treatment is creating a Google sheet. And this is very eye-opening for women, especially children, of every single thing you do in a day. And just doing that, writing that, it's like, oh my goodness, I'm doing 150 things in a day. And then you hand that list over to somebody else, and you let them then organize it and find the people to show up, help you with meals, pick up the kids, drive them from A to B if there's children involved. If there's not children involved, it's still complicated, but it's not quite as complex. But the interesting thing about breast cancer as an energetic illness is that sometimes women are always doing for others and not taking care of themselves enough. And when you have been diagnosed, and as Amanda just said, people show up. Who shows up and who doesn't show up, and who gives freely of their light and who doesn't, after you've done a lot for them, that can be a turning point in getting relationships better. And part of healing through breast cancer is to really take a look at the quality of your friendships.
Yes.
I think, anyway.
I totally agree. Yes. And I find that people, I don't know, I feel like people want to be supportive, right? They just don't always know what to do. And that's the other thing. Like if it's the more we talk about these conversations, that's why I love that you bring this to the light, because these are just things that need to be talked about. These are, for so long, people have kind of suffered in silence. And it's so good to know, like, there's so many resources available. There's ways to be empowered as you move through this experience. Like there's so many ways to use pleasure as a healing balm as you move through it, right? You can find the good in, and of course you want to have all the experiences that you need to have and the emotions, and allow yourself to be, in all the ways that you are. And also remembering that the more that you can try to find those things that bring you stability and pleasure, the more you're gonna, feel better in the process, right? Because it's a journey, and the more you take care of yourself along the way, even through the hard times, it can be, there's ways to like add a little light into the experience, I guess is what I'm trying to say, in a very dark time sometimes, right?
I think adding a little light in a very dark time is sometimes all that can be done, but don't underestimate the beauty and the strength of that moment, right?
Yes.
And it like lets you breathe. And sometimes that's as good as it gets. And it doesn't mean you're not doing enough, or you're not doing anything right, or you're doing something wrong. It's just that there are these intense times in life where that's just what it is. And I think communication is key.
Yes.
And we haven't been taught, as part of our upbringing in this American culture, about how to communicate needs, desires, wants, not wants, likes, dislikes. We haven't been taught how to communicate that.
Correct.
And so saying something with kindness and vulnerability, like, honey, you know, it would feel really great if you could use this oil and rub my feet.
Mm-hmm.
And then if the person doesn't do it the quote unquote right way, educate them. Oh, but it would feel really great if you could push harder right here.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, don't expect the person to know what it is that you need or like, but you can say it in a way that they need to be educated. What do you like? What feels good? Oh, that's too hard. Don't push like that. Just
Mm-hmm.
push a little lighter. I mean, this is all part of, and then, you know, you can do it for the other person when you have the energy, and it's okay to say, I don't have the energy right now, but that feels really great. And then you can just snuggle. So the whole concept of intimacy and pleasure changes when you're recovering from trauma and as you get older. I think that's one of the messages we want to say here, right?
Yes, yes, for sure. Yes.
It's not the 1, 2, 3 intercourse as you get older, and especially when you've had physiological and physical changes from surgery. Everybody's older. It's not like it used to be. So there are many ways of being intimate and having pleasure, and that still makes you feel connected and vulnerable with your partner and sharing love.
And I think that's a huge thing to note, because and being that I'm a sex coach, you know, I don't love the 1, 2, 3 thing anyways. But that's kind of the truth, is that a lot of us haven't really been taught other ways to connect and bond with our partner. If there's no like specific, like penetrative sex, for example, but there's so many ways, like you say, that you can create this intimate bond. There's so many bonding behaviors that are, you know, erotic in nature or connecting in nature, so that you can keep that that connection and support for one another alive, even through experiences like this. So I think that's just important to note, is that there are, you know, there's ways to remain connected. And oftentimes what happens is the opposite happens, right? Because your partner's afraid, you might be nervous, like all the things, right? Then you kind of go into your own little corner, so to speak, versus coming together. And so there's lots of ways that you can come together. And yes, sometimes, you know, you might just need to be open to learning what those are, or getting your partner to, right? I'm going through a lot right now. What would be helpful is if would you be willing to like maybe read this book so you can help us find ways to stay connected? Because I don't have the mental capacity to do it. Because oftentimes that's a really good thing for them to do. They want to know how to help. And that is something you can give them a job to do.
Well, what book would you recommend? Because it's great. You could say, here's the book, and the person can read the book and come back and say, well, how about if I read you a paragraph from chapter 2? I mean, we gotta like create our own way through this. What are some books that you recommend, Amanda?
Well, I think there's some great books I always love, just that I find are fascinating to read around sexuality, which sometimes can be just fun, interesting conversations. One of my favorites is Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski. And I also really love The Women's Anatomy of Arousal by Sherry Winston. There's a book called Cupid's Broken Arrow, which has a lot of bonding behavior activities in it. So I really like that one it's kind of an interesting premise of the book, but basically what's good about it is there are a lot of ways of bonding behaviors that don't involve like specific sexual connection that are great for staying bonded. That one's called Cupid's Broken Arrow, which I think is a good one. So those would be some starters.
And what was the second one? I didn't get that one.
The Women's Anatomy of Arousal by Sherry Winston.
You can find all of these on Amazon, people, even if I don't have the name of the author properly. But
yes.
And Amanda, how can people find you?
So you can find me at amandatesta.com, and I have a podcast as well, and all kinds of great resources on my website if you go to amandatesta.com/thegoods. And I also, if you are open, I have a free 3-day sensual self-care course that I'm happy to share with the listeners, because I think when people are like, well, how do I even go about doing this? What does it look like? Then it can just kind of walk you through the steps.
And what is that? Is that on your website?
So yes, if you go to amandatesta.com/nourish.
Nourish.
RISH, yes.
Ladies, I think that is a very beautiful, I think this topic is so important And it's one of what I call the elephant in the rooms topics around breast cancer. And I don't want there to be any beautiful elephants in any beautiful rooms. I want the elephants to be wild in nature. And I want you to have beautiful open rooms in your psyche. And I created a 3-day mini summit on recovering intimacy after breast cancer. And Amanda was one of the featured guest speakers. And if you're part of my Empowered Against Recurrence program, that mini summit is a bonus and it's in your resource section. But so I already know how wonderful Amanda is in this area. And so if you're listening to this now or later, you have nothing to lose and everything to gain by taking advantage of her nourish, amandatesta.com/nourish. It's a gift that you're giving to yourself. It will only make you feel better.
Yes.
Okay. That's what it's all about. You don't have to do everything, but if you have a lot of resistance to this topic, I'm ringing a little bell. This is what you need.
Yes.
And so I encourage everybody, amandatesta.com/nourish, especially if you're sitting there listening to me and thinking, are getting irritated. That means you need some loving support to clear out the elephant from the room or elephants from the room. amandatesta.com nourish. She's very gentle. This is nothing inappropriate. It's not like some kind of pornography thing. It's professional and it's beautifully done. It's very sensitive. She's all of those things, and it will only help you in your healing because you're turning on your pleasure senses and you're decreasing your stress.
Yes, yes.
That's very healing, right?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you so much for being here. It's been wonderful having you, ladies. This is such an important topic. I encourage you to take advantage of this and reach out to Amanda if you want some private time with your spouse. If you're having problems and you want to recover your health and your intimacy and your life, she's the person to do it with.
Yes.
Okay? Both of you will appreciate her. So thank you for being here, Amanda. It's Carol Laurie signing off for now. Ladies, have a beautiful, peaceful day, and there'll be more later.
Thank you so much, Dr. Carol.